All right. This is part 3 of the March 2nd show, 2012. All right. We're talking to Neil DeGrasse Tyson. I took a view of the video, and I have you with a shot of clouds that you can't see anything. So hopefully this time you'll have a better view, and we will talk on the other end. All right? Enjoy the show.
Okay, here we go. Welcome back to Coast Neil DeGrasse Tyson, our special guest, and of course he is a leading astrophysicist, director of the Hayden Planetarium at the American Museum of Natural History. We're talking about his new work, Space Chronicles: Facing the Ultimate Frontier. Neil, are you disappointed that we don't seem to have a clear-cut mission yet with astronauts?
Well, okay, the Obama administration does have a NASA mission statement. So the issue is not whether there's a mission statement. There is. The issue is whether that mission statement is right for NASA, right for the country, or right for any other expectations the rest of us have for NASA. So that's really where the rubber hits the road. So in the Obama plan, and I was at his speech at Kennedy Space Center, which was given April 15th, and when was it, 2009, I guess, or 10?
Almost when he was in office.
Oh, sorry, you're right. Yeah, so it would have been, so 2009.
Would have been 2009.
Yeah, that's right, thank you. And I was at that speech, coincidentally given on tax day, April 15th, and he gave a rousing speech. His speech was always rousing, and there was an interesting line in it where he said, you know, I want to go back to space, and I want to, you know, go to Mars and visit asteroids. And the first time I'd ever heard a president say, let's visit an asteroid.
Yeah.
So it was very forward-looking. And in there he said, oh, by the way, we've already been to the moon, so why go back? Let's just skip over that.
Okay. We're not done with it.
And that, in fact, got an applause, because that's part of a more visionary statement to move on. But when you reflect on that briefly, what you realize is we were already preparing to go back to the moon before we went on to Mars. That was put forth by the Bush administration.
That's right.
And so that plan would have people transitioning immediately after the shuttle, going to work directly on the launch vehicles that would go to the moon, which would be sooner than anything that would take us to Mars. By saying, let's not go to the moon, everybody that would have worked on that moon mission essentially got laid off or reassigned, or so thousands and thousands of people lost their jobs because of this. And so that created a politically tense environment for Obama with regard to NASA.
Sure.
And so it was, so that's a first thing. So now there's no shuttle, and there's nothing to take up American astronauts off of American soil. Yet we have the International Space Station that essentially we built with the help of international partners. But we were the lead partner in that. So how do we get to the space station? We got to hitch a ride with the Russians.
And pay them.
Yeah, so therefore, hitch is not the right word.
That's right. Be an expensive taxi.
When you hitch a ride on a car, they're not charging you for that, right? So we're not hitching. We're buying a seat and to ride a Russian spacecraft to go to our space station, and that's embarrassing, actually.
I agree with you.
But okay, but I can be embarrassed. You know, I'm mature enough. I can accept that. However, it has other consequences, or what the economists would call an opportunity cost. The things that could happen that are not happening, and therefore you're worse off. If we don't have an ambitious, near-term plan to advance the space frontier, then the concept of inventing a tomorrow by advancing a frontier becomes lost from society. It already is lost from society. I'm old enough to remember the 1960s when we were on our way to the moon, and every mission was more ambitious than the next.
And how exciting that period was.
And it was exciting because the press would get to talk about, now they were orbiting higher than ever before, faster than ever before, the first spacewalk. And each one of these, a brave person, because they're the first to ever do it, attempts to do something that has never been done before.
That's right.
And anytime you do that, you are you need the intelligent assistance of engineers, of scientists who are designing the space gloves and designing the spacesuit and the spacecraft and all of this. And so you are driven. You need medical doctors to know how to think about what's going on to the zero-G astronaut. All of these frontier subjects are tapped, and the country sees this, and it affects and influences the culture. The culture was very forward-looking, even in the face of one of the most turbulent decades since the Civil War. It was like the civil rights movement was.
And every kid wanted to be an astronaut.
Every kid wanted to be an astronaut because you could look up and you knew that this epic adventure was unfolding right before your eyes, and that influenced you whether or not you even became an astronaut. The culture of innovation, the culture of wanting to do something more tomorrow than you did today, permeated the entire society.
Yeah.
That's the society that gave us the World's Fair of the 1960s. That entire World's Fair was all about tomorrow. The World's Fair didn't create the 60s. The 60s created the World's Fair. And so we live in a time where nobody's thinking about tomorrow, and that coincides with no progress in advancing a space frontier. No visible progress, no progress that would have any influence on anybody. So I think the Obama plan was, well, then he's saying we'll go on Mars in the 2030s, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, where are you going to be in the 2030s? You're going to be like on the beach in Hawaii, right? So that'll have to be shepherded by a president to be named later on a budget not even established.
Who would probably change the program.
This is the problem. So if it's simply a presidential political decision, as it was with the Bush administration, then it's susceptible to economic wins and political wins. Whereas, if it is part of the cultural directive, then it transcends economic wins and political wins, and the president then has to execute what it is the electorate demands of him.
Kennedy understood that, Neil.
Yes, and so the driver that got us into space under Kennedy was, of course, war. Many space enthusiasts forget this or never really factored it into their assessment of the era. The reason why that needs repeating, constant repeating, is because we went into space due to war. War with the Soviet Union, of course. Because NASA was founded on the scare factor of Sputnik. 1 year after Sputnik, NASA became an agency. And by the way, Sputnik translates to fellow traveler. Oh, that sounds fine. Okay, that's fine. And what was inside the head of it? It was a radio transmitter.
Something that beeped, right?
Beep, beep. Okay, isn't that nice? However, the military knew that what is Sputnik actually? Sputnik was actually a hollowed-out intercontinental ballistic missile.
That's right.
And so flying over our heads. And so there's the drive.
And you couldn't stop it.
You couldn't stop it. There was no mechanism. And so that spooked us. We formed NASA. We go into space. We want to control space as the next high ground. We want to go to the moon as a demonstration of this exercise. And we get to the moon and we find out Russia's not really going to the moon. Therefore, we stopped going to the moon.
I don't think they ever wanted to go to the moon.
That could be so, yeah. But that's not what matters. What matters is if we think they want to go to the moon, right? That's really all that drives.
That's why we went.
That's why that drives the activity.
Heck, I was talking to Jerry Purnell, science and science fiction writer, telling me a story, Neil, some time ago, about how NASA was soliciting volunteers, and they got many, of an astronaut who they would drop down on the moon in like a bubble, and he'd live there until he died, and they would drop supplies down to him, but we would say we were the first to put a man on the moon. And it was an actual program that we were working on.
The one-way trip.
The one-way trip.
Mm-hmm.
And they had volunteers.
Yeah. So here's what happened. You have a community of space enthusiasts who saw the moon voyage, the Apollo program, and said, oh, on the moon by 1969. We'll be on Mars by the 1980s. No. If we should have. If we went to the moon because we're explorers and discoverers and it's in our DNA, then Mars would be the natural next step.
That's right.
But since we went to the moon because of war and Russia was not going to the moon, it is obvious and ever present that we would stop that adventure. And so So the point is, like Columbus himself was an explorer and a discoverer. But the people who wrote the checks have different motives. And so this is not widely embraced. But when you do understand it and embrace it, it empowers you to make decisions about how to re-engage that enterprise. And you re-engage it not by telling people, we just need political will, or we just need risk takers today. We just need leaders with charisma. No, it's bull. It is a false, delusional concept. In fact, the original title of this book is currently Space Chronicles, Facing the Ultimate Frontier. The original title was Failure to Launch, The Dreams and Delusions of Space Enthusiasts. And the publisher said, no, that's too depressing. We can't put it out.
Well, isn't it amazing that we went to the moon with 43-year-old plus technology? It's amazing.
Yeah, well, in fact, you don't really want everything that you do when you bust through the frontier to be the very latest, because the very latest things are not battle tested, right? One of the reasons why the Soyuz capsule that we now fly to the space station with Russians is the most reliable manned vehicle there ever was, is because of its simplicity. Very few moving parts. Everything in there is kind of a blunt instrument that just sort of basically gets the job done. The astronauts are squeezed into the capsule, knees up against their chest. You look at the space shuttle, that was like a limousine. There's all this room, and I remember when the space shuttle first came out in 1981, one of the news accounts says, the space shuttle is the most complex space vehicle ever designed. And I thought to myself, they were boasting of this, and I said, do you really, is that something to be proud of? That is complex? You know?
Yeah.
And, you know, there's something to be said for simplicity. And so, sure, one of the elements of Apollo was its relative simplicity given what it was able to accomplish.
What is happening?
All right. We are going to have to cut this one off because my time's about to run out. So, remember, live long and prosper. No. I love you guys. Have a beautiful day. It's Friday, so get ready for the weekend, as that dumbass song goes. But yeah, we got the weekend coming, and I hope everybody does a lot of good stuff with their time, because that's why we're here, you know, to spend your time the way you want to, whether it be right or wrong, it's all you. So, I love you. Try to remember the 6 things. Try to remember your water. Try to remember to deep breathe and tone and eat carrots, which I was doing while I'm listening. And as I'm chewing the carrots a million times, mulching it up really good the way it needs to be, I am humming the frequency and fixing my DNA and feeling better about it and getting my head straight. Listening to Neil explain completely, very understandable. I'm sorry, this truck in front of me is throwing ice out their window. Anyway, oh no, it's coming off the top of the truck. Oh, there's ice coming off the top of the truck. I'm gonna let this guy get some room. Anyway, now I forgot where I was, but you know what I'm saying. Keep your head straight, and remember, it's all about love. All we need is love. Da 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 da. Have a great day. Living.